doing great, Randy. We're in the middle of the season now, man. I mean, all hands on deck, right?
Yep, we are. And I almost feel guilty that we didn't talk about the small band thing sooner.
Yeah.
We've had some requests for directors that are working with smaller numbers. How do you get a group to be successful from a standpoint of, just the music end of it? How do you get the sonority to work, all of those sorts of things? And I know you and I both have, our bag of tricks, but I think, the overall reaching thing is regardless of what the size of your ensemble is, if it's 100 or less wins, closer to 40 or even 20 or 30, you want to try to, as you're planning for next year, think about maybe trying to make sure you have a balanced instrumentation, regardless of whether you've got 30 or 40 wins or 20 wins. Try to get, enough bass voices in the ensemble, things like that. So, what's your philosophy on that as far as the smaller ensembles?
Well, I think you make a great point. It's also something that I think is tough for directors to do is to move kids around. And, sometimes parents will have a tough time with it, kids will have a tough time with it. But the bottom line is you're trying to set your kids up for success. And somehow you've got to explain to them that without a balanced instrumentation, it's going to be hard to get a good sound. Because, Randy, you and I both know, and we've learned this after doing this for a long time, that small groups can sound really good if they're balanced, and if they have balanced instrumentation. So instead of just having six alto saxes, for example, you might want to have three altos, two tenors, and a bari, so you have an actual sax choir. Instead of having six clarinets, you might want to have four clarinets and two bass clarinets. Now, some people are saying, wow, that's not enough clarinets. Well, it really is if you write them in the right register. But what's even cooler than that is if you have a bari sax and some bass clarinets helping to provide that bass voice, tenor sax helping to provide that tenor voice that you may not be getting from trombones, baritones if you don't have enough of them, that can really help. So, and you don't have to make a lot of changes, right, Randy? Just a few changes here and there to make sure you're covering the instrumentation from bottom to top.
Absolutely. And, everybody, I'm going to mention the word that everybody always cringes about, the electronic piece of it. If you can, get enough voices doubled in some of the electronics in places where you need to fill out and support the rest of the ensemble without hearing the electronic voice separately, but actually integrating it as if it were written. There are concert band pieces that use piano. We blend that into the ensemble. You have to blend it like any other voice, but you can use that as a way to help fill some things out, at least in terms of just the overall chordal structures. Doing those sorts of things can be helpful as long as you can hear the winds and the electronics blended together, not separate. And so much of that comes from, as you know, Richard, the smaller groups they're exposed more because you can hear individual sounds
Mm-hmm.
because they're not blended as well. I think it's a combination of learning or teaching the students to play with better resonant sounds while still working on blend, regardless of the balance of the ensemble. There are some neat things that small ensembles can do, to get that dynamic contrast. Talk about that.
Well, I won't mention this group that I heard the other night, but I heard a group do exactly that, a group that had smaller instrumentation, but they were so smart about how they approached it. They had like some all-state level players, so they used them as soloists. And then they wrote very realistic parts for the rest of the band, so when the band came in, they sounded powerful, and there weren't a ton of them. And they used electronics to help enhance the sounds a little bit, but you never felt like the electronics were covering up the winds. You always heard the winds. So there is a way to do all this. You just have to be a little patient. And I would encourage directors who aren't really comfortable with the whole electronic thing to try to find someone who is, get some help. And there are a lot of people in our activity right now that do electronics that are more than willing to come out and help other groups figure out how to do this electronic thing. So just look around online, even on YouTube, because there are people that are willing to help you with the electronics.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's the whole piece, and you working for Hal Leonard and being a composer, would you have a problem if a band director took a canned marching band arrangement that you have and re reworked it for maybe this phrase is played by a soloist? Do you think anyone has a problem with that for the most part?
I would hope they wouldn't. I certainly wouldn't, because it has to be about the kids, you know. And any arranger who would give someone a chart and then say, if something doesn't work for your kids that you can't, you better not adjust it. That's crazy. I mean, that's
Right.
crazy, because as a director, the buck stops with you, and you have to make the decisions that are going to be best for your kids. And I'm just going to give this little caveat, this little reminder, that you can change your chart however you need to, even if it's a published chart. What you can't do is then take that chart and sell it to somebody else. Then you're in trouble. All right. But if you just take a chart that you purchased and you change it for your kids, that's not a problem.
Yeah. So be creative, think out of the box, tailor it for your students, tailor it for your strengths, and you'll feel a lot more successful, and your kids will feel better about what they're doing as well. Well, thanks, Richard, for the conversation about that particular topic, and we hope all of you have a great finish to the marching season. Continue to work hard, continue to motivate your kids. You're doing great stuff out there. We really appreciate all your efforts.
Thanks, Randy. Take care, everybody, and good luck rest of the season.